scheduled for April 30th this year. He polled 394 votes out of 1,033 valid votes cast to defeat 8 other candidates in a keenly contested primary at the Forestry Commission Training Center at Agyapong in the Ashanti region, which was supervised by the Electoral Commission. Even before the official declaration by the EC, Mr. Boateng's supporters burst into wild jubilation after receiving signals that he was on his way to clinching victory. All the other contestants present congratulated him for emerging as the parliamentary candidate-elect when it became clear he had taken an unassailable lead and pledged their commitment to his campaign in the interest of party unity. The chosen candidate, a legal practitioner, replaces Dr. John Ampontiakuma, the former Member of Parliament, whose death on March 7th this year triggered the impending by-election. The parliamentary candidate-elect promised inclusive leadership and extended the invitation to his fellow contestants to join him in prosecuting his campaign. Mr. Boateng said with the internal contest over, the stage was set for collective efforts towards a landslide victory for the NPP, especially in the December general election. Retaining the NPP in power, he noted, will largely depend on a united front from the polling station to the national level and charged members to work hard to ensure victory.
Me manfo MPP abusuaku a wadwo so ato aba ma me se me mayor mo parliamentary candidate no ye metumi aka ne se enenkunimdi a abai eyenkunimdi a ye de ma John Ampontiakuma doctor e bon pa ye se ba bia ye wura no kra ewo no onyankopon emfa no ensie yie na sa samando yoman a eya wontwa nani na ommehwe yen maka no awie no afei maka kire wo mu amene wo mu kwa akansie emema wo mu bosie ene ma fefe bi amene wo mu kwa akansie wo sha maye wo mu kwa akansie de wo mu nyina wo mu ho fepa asabu amaka kire wo mu ne se ekunimdi a ene abai eye mene wo mu nyina dia ekunimdi no ye mene wo mu nyina dia yenyina na kunimdie no aba ma yen eye osom a ejoso MPP abusua de ama yesi yensom.
Mr. Bernard Nchiboesiakon, the regional chairman, applauded the delegates and all party structures in the constituency for a peaceful exercise. He reminded them of the huge task ahead and called on all to put their shoulders to the wheel for a resounding victory come December 7th.
Bati so yababo mabaso aye chairman Bute and your national research and elections Evans Mako and so yababo mabaso na contestants so omo mudina ye nyina so yabo mabaso and the whole Ghana obi a hwejo so na adwoso fo asema mo kan say lawyer go lawyer come lawyer go lawyer come enti adwoso fo akasa bia so ye ne honorable Boateng se MP no adware ne dada enti ye ne honorable Boateng se ono ne be di animachi.
Meanwhile, in the Agona West constituency in the Central Region, Mr. Chris Jojo Ahin Arthur, the technical director of the Youth Employment Agency, YEA, has won the NPP parliamentary primary by defeating the incumbent Member of Parliament, Mrs. Cynthia Mamle Morrison, and 3 others. Mr. Arthur polled 240 votes. Mr. Ben Yamwa obtained 221 votes, Mr. Yosin Otu 168 votes, Mr. Joseph Afankwa 155, and Mrs. Morrison 152. There were 4 rejected ballots. The constituency parliamentary primary was delayed because Mr. Afankwa, an aggrieved contestant, went to court to restrain the constituency executives from holding the election on January 27, 2024. The election was supervised by the Agona West office of the Electoral Commission, led by its director, Mr. Anobil Forson. Speaking to the media after the primary, Mr. Arthur thanked the delegates for the confidence reposed in him and pledged to unite the party's front. He called on the 4 losing contestants to rally behind him to maintain the seat for the NPP on December 7th.
I'm the people's choice. The people were rooting for me because they know I will win the seat with huge margin. So the masses were calling for Chris Arthur, and indeed, delegates have listened and they have voted for Chris Arthur. The best thing, what is needed now is unity, togetherness. All the candidates, we have to come together and work hard for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and Chris Arthur to maintain the seats, to develop Agona West. That is the most important thing now.
The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has announced a staff-level agreement on the second review of the extended credit facility with Ghana. Once approved by the IMF management and completed by the IMF Executive Board, Ghana will have access to approximately $360 million in financing. This was revealed by Mr. Stefan Rode, IMF Mission Chief for Ghana, at a press conference organized by the Ministry of Finance in Accra on Saturday.
My IMF colleagues and I have been in Accra for a couple of weeks now on a mission to assess performance under the Ghanaian authorities' 3-year IMF-supported program, which was approved by our Executive Board in May 2023. The program is designed to have 6 monthly reviews, and the current mission is intended for the second review of the program. During the mission, but also even before, we have been engaging very closely with the authorities on program implementation, and I'm very pleased to announce this morning that we have reached a staff-level agreement on the second review of the program. Let me add that this agreement is subject to the approval by the IMF management and our Executive Board once the necessary financing assurances have been received. An agreement between the Ghanaian authorities and their official creditors on a memorandum of understanding for the debt treatment and debt treatment consistent with the agreement in principle that was reached in January 2025 would provide these needed assurances. Once the IMF Executive Board completes the second review of the program, Ghana would have access to about $360 million, bringing the total IMF financial support disbursed under the arrangement since May 2023 to $1.6 billion.
The IMF praised Ghana's strong performance under the program, citing positive economic growth and declining rates and improvement in both fiscal and external positions. These achievements, according to the IMF, are attributed to the authority's strong policy efforts and implementation of key reforms.
Our assessment is that performance under the program has been generally strong and consistent with the authority's commitments. Most of the quantitative targets were met, and good progress is being made on the key structural reform milestones under the program. Most importantly, the authority's strong policy and reform efforts to restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability, to lay the foundations for stronger and more inclusive growth, are already generating positive results. In other words, the program is working. Economic activity in 2023 was more robust than we initially envisaged. Growth projections are about to be revised in the context of the program, especially for this year in 2024. On the fiscal front, the government has adjusted the policy stance to bring about a reduction in deficits and to restore the sustainability of public finances. Our assessment is that fiscal performance has been strong, and Ghana has lowered the fiscal primary deficit by over 4 percentage points of GDP in 2023, and it is on track to achieve a primary surplus of 0.5% of GDP in 2024. I believe it's the first time in a long time that Ghana would manage to have a primary surplus. The government has met its non-oil revenue mobilization target last year. It has also kept spending within the budget limits. The authorities have also expanded and significantly the social protection programs to help mitigate the crisis impact on the most vulnerable population. The government is committed to providing additional support going forward by undertaking reforms to improve the operational efficiency of those programs and by expanding their coverage and the resources allocated to the program. On the monetary policy front, we can say that monetary policy has remained appropriately tight, and that has allowed inflation to decline rapidly. On the external sector side, there has been a significant improvement, and in particular, international reserve accumulation is ahead of the program objectives. Financial stability has been preserved, and banks posted solid profits in 2023. The GFSF, the Ghana Financial Stability Fund, has started its operations, and some of the banks have already been recapitalized with the resources of this fund. In terms of the next steps, and given Ghana's strong progress under the program, it is important that the authorities reach agreement with their official creditors on this memorandum of understanding that I talked about earlier. And we look forward to the authorities' continued efforts to reach this agreement and the other creditors as well, in line with the program parameters.
For his part, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, the finance minister, assured that the government is determined not to overburden Ghanaians by paying more taxes. Rather, the government will use the hard way to collect revenue from those who have not been paying the appropriate taxes and those who have been evading taxes in the country. He indicated that there was an urgent need to increase revenue in line with the implementation of the $3 billion loan support program, but the government was also being careful not to burden the few Ghanaian taxpayers. Dr. Amin Adam also stated that the government was pursuing reforms within the tax administration to ensure that proper assessments were done and people made to pay the appropriate taxes to the state in the easiest and fastest ways possible. While lauding Ghanaians for their sacrifices made since the program's implementation, the finance minister encouraged all to remain patient and sacrificial.
We have successfully implemented macroeconomic policies characterized by fiscal consolidation, involving aggressive revenue mobilization, underpinned by a medium-term revenue strategy, and expenditure rationalization measures, complemented by tight monetary policies by the Bank of Ghana, as well as macro-critical structural reforms in key sectors of the economy to support fiscal debt sustainability and inclusive growth. All of this have, over the course of 1 year, resulted in more than anticipated growth performance in GDP growth, with GDP ending 2023 at 2.9%, compared to the original target of 1.5% and the revised target of 2.3%. We had to look at alternative measures to generate more revenue to fill in that gap. And so for those alternative measures, some of which were announced in the budget statement of 2023 and also 2024, but were not effectively implemented. And so now we are determined to effectively implement these measures to generate the desired revenue to fill in the gap created as a result of the suspension of the VAT. Now, what this means is that when we take a decision as a government which borders on our fiscal framework, there are consequences. And the consequences could be dire unless we are proactive enough to find ways to fill in the gap and avoid those consequences. One of the consequences could be that you miss out on the target, the fiscal targets, and the IMF program then suffers. And the country is then returned to challenges, economic challenges that we all have been trying to prevent since we signed on to this program. The other consequences could be for people to pay more taxes. And we are determined to go out there and collect the taxes from those who have not been paying. Those who have been evading taxes, we are going to go after them. And we are also pursuing reforms within the tax administration to ensure that proper assessments are done and people pay the right taxes that they have to pay to the state.
Dr. Ernest Addison, the governor of the Bank of Ghana, reiterated the government's determination to make sure that state institutions worked to change the narrative of election expenditure, derailing economic progress in the country.
Overall, on all sides, we have reached a conclusion that we must continue with steadfast program implementation of policies, continue with the fiscal rectitude, continue with the tight monetary policy stance, and pursue the necessary structural reforms to underpin the sustainability of the progress we are making. On the IMF side, we expect some degree of flexibility to reflect changing dynamics in the Ghanaian economy. To conclude, in Ghana's recent history, we have not been able to successfully implement an IMF-supported program in an election year without derailment. The government and the central bank are committed to changing that narrative. We recognize the importance of continued macroeconomic stability and an early return to the capital markets, and we will remain committed to ensure that the program implementation stays firm.
Financial analysts believe when the IMF board meets in June this year, it would approve Ghana's $360 million third tranche, following the staff-level agreement reached between the Ghanaian authorities and the IMF mission team. That will bring the total disbursement for Ghana to $1.56 billion since the implementation of the $3 billion three-year IMF loan support program. The program is aimed at restoring macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability, building resilience, and laying the foundation for stronger and more inclusive growth.